It started as an ordinary evening, soft music playing, the scent of rain in the air, and her laughter filling the space between us. I loved that sound. It made everything feel warm, safe. Then she said it. 2 words that sent a chill down my spine. My husband. I laughed. I thought she was joking, but then I saw the look in her eyes. Calm, unreadable, a look that made my stomach drop. She wasn't joking. And in that moment, I realized I had no idea who Delilah really was. Stay with me till the end, because this story, it will haunt you. Section 1. From the moment I met Delilah, she felt different. Not just beautiful, though she was, but magnetic. The kind of person who walks into a room and makes everything else fade into the background. She had this way of speaking, like every word was carefully chosen, like she carried secrets she'd never tell. And I was drawn to her. We met on a crisp autumn evening, the kind where the wind carries a quiet chill, but the city lights make the world feel alive. She was sitting alone at a cafe, stirring her coffee, lost in thought. Something about her felt familiar, even though we were strangers. I don't even remember how our conversation started, but once it didn't stop. She spoke in a way that made time disappear. Her stories pulled me in, her laughter made my chest feel lighter, and when she looked at me, really looked at me, it was like she saw right through me. By the time the cafe was closing, neither of us wanted to say goodbye. "One more drink?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. I couldn't say no. That one drink turned into a whole night. We wandered through empty streets, our breath visible in the cold air, talking about everything and nothing. She told me she loved thunderstorms, but hated the sound of clocks ticking, that she believed in fate, but not in coincidences, that she'd never felt truly understood by anyone before. And when she kissed me under a flickering street lamp, I knew I was done for. Over the next few months, I fell hard. We spent every moment we could together, and the more I learned about her, the more obsessed I became. She was unpredictable, mysterious, intoxicating. One minute she was playful and teasing, the next she was lost in thought, staring into the distance like she was remembering something she couldn't say out loud. I told myself I didn't need to know everything, that some people just carry pasts too heavy to share. But then came that night. We were having dinner at her place, just the 2 of us. Candles flickering on the table, she poured me a glass of wine, her fingers trailing along the rim of her own glass. "You remind me of him," she said suddenly. I blinked. "Of who?" She smiled, a small, almost sad smile. "My husband." I let out a short laugh. I thought she was joking, but she didn't laugh back. A cold shiver crept down my spine. My grip on the glass tightened. "Your husband?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, swirling the wine in her glass. "Yeah." The room felt different now. The warmth from the candles seemed dimmer. The sound of rain tapping against the window suddenly felt too loud. "You never told me you were married," I said carefully. She tilted her head slightly. "You never asked." A sharp, uneasy feeling settled in my chest. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Are you divorced?" She paused, just for a second, but it was enough. "Not exactly," she murmured. The way she said it, so casual, so effortless, made my stomach twist. I forced a smile, trying to keep the mood light. "What does that mean?" She took a slow sip of her wine before answering. "It means some things don't end the way you expect them to." A silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to push. But something in her expression warned me not to. Still, a voice in the back of my head whispered a single thought. What if I don't really know the woman sitting in front of me? And for the first time since meeting Delilah, I felt something I never expected. Fear. My mind couldn't shake the way she said it. Not exactly. 2 words that sat heavy in my chest, pressing down like a weight I couldn't ignore. I wanted to pretend it was nothing, that maybe I misheard her, or she misspoke. But deep down, I knew better. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the questions wouldn't stop. Why had she never mentioned him before? Where was he now? And why did she seem so calm? The next morning, I decided to ask. We were sitting on her balcony, coffee steaming in our hands, the city stretching out beneath us. She looked so peaceful, like she had no worries in the world. But I did. "Tell me about him," I said. She didn't flinch, didn't even look surprised. She just tilted her head slightly, as if deciding how much to say. "His name was Christopher," she finally said. The word made my stomach twist. "And?" I pressed. She took a sip of her coffee, staring out at the skyline. "And he's not here anymore." My hands tightened around my mug. "What happened?" Another pause, longer this time. Then she let out a small breath. "He left." Something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was something else. "He just left?" I asked slowly. Her lips curled into a faint smile. "People leave all the time," my skin prickled. "And you never heard from him again?" She turned to face me, her gaze unreadable. "No." Silence stretched between us. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down into something dark and endless. "Did you love him?" I asked, my voice quieter now. She exhaled softly, as if the question carried more weight than she expected. "I thought I did." The way she said it sent a chill down my spine. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones, but I wasn't ready to let it go. Not yet. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the conversation, analysing every pause, every shift in her expression. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt something gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. She never said he divorced her. She never said he moved away. She only said, "He's not here anymore." The thought made my stomach churn. I tried to push it away, but it clung to me, refusing to let go. I needed answers. So, the next day, while Delilah was out, I did something I never thought I would. I searched her name, and what I found made my blood run cold. There it was, an old news article, a photo of a man with dark eyes and a confident smile. Christopher Dawn, missing, presumed dead. I couldn't breathe. My eyes darted over the words, my heart slamming against my ribs. Vanished without a trace. No body found, no suspects. Last seen near his home. My stomach twisted into knots. I looked around Delilah's apartment, suddenly hyper-aware of every shadow, every quiet creak of the walls. I had been sleeping next to this woman, kissing her, loving her, and all this time she had been keeping something from me, something dark, something dangerous. My hands were clammy as I shut my laptop, my pulse hammering in my ears. I needed to leave, but before I could stand, the front door creaked open, footsteps, and then her voice, calm, soft, like nothing had changed. "What are you looking for?" I turned slowly, my breath caught in my throat. She was standing in the doorway watching me, and the way she smiled, it made my blood turn to ice. My breath hitched. Delilah stood in the doorway, her figure framed by the dim light from the hall. Her head tilted slightly, lips curled in that unreadable smile. But her eyes were locked onto me, sharp, studying. "What are you looking for?" she repeated, her voice smooth, almost playful. I swallowed hard, forcing my expression to stay neutral. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure she could hear it. "Nothing," I said, shutting the laptop. She stepped forward, slow, deliberate. The sound of her heels clicking against the floor sent a chill down my spine. "Nothing," she echoed, stopping just a few feet away. "Because from here, it looks like you were searching for something." I forced a small laugh, trying to shake off the tension. "Just checking emails." She didn't blink. For a long, suffocating moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us wasn't normal. It felt thick, heavy, like something unseen was pressing down on the room. Then she smiled again, that slow, knowing smile. "You're a terrible liar," she said softly. My stomach twisted. I wanted to look away, to break the moment, but I couldn't. Finally, she let out a small breath and walked past me, setting her bag down on the counter. "You should have just asked me," I stiffened. "Asked you what?" She turned to face me, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. "About Christopher." My body went rigid. She knew. She knew what I had been looking for. I forced myself to stay calm. "All right," I said, my voice careful. "Then tell me, what happened to him?" Delilah didn't answer right away. Instead, she picked up a knife from the counter. Just a simple kitchen knife, but in that moment, in her hands, it looked like something else. Entirely a threat. She turned it over slowly, tracing her finger along the edge. "People leave," she said finally. "They disappear. They slip away when you least expect it." I clenched my fists to stop my hands from shaking. "That's not an answer." Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, and for the first time I saw something behind them. Not sadness, not guilt, amusement. "Why does it matter so much to you?" she asked. I hesitated. "Because you never told me he was missing." A slow, eerie smile spread across her lips. "Missing, right." My skin prickled. "Is he?" She let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. "You ask too many questions." I opened my mouth to say something, but she pushed off the counter and walked toward me. Close, too close. I could smell her perfume, feel the warmth of her breath as she leaned in. "Do you trust me?" she whispered. My throat was dry. My pulse pounded in my ears. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe she was just playing some strange game. But deep down, I knew the truth. I didn't trust her. Not anymore. Not after what I found. Not after the way she was looking at me now, like I was something fragile. Something that could break at any moment. I swallowed hard and forced a small smile. "Of course I do." Her lips curled slightly as if she knew I was lying. "Good," she murmured, "because once you stop trusting someone, that's when things get dangerous." A chill ran down my spine. She turned away, setting the knife down on the counter with a soft clink. "Come to bed," she said over her shoulder. I stood frozen, my body screaming at me to run, to leave, to never come back. But I didn't move, because somehow I knew if I turned my back on her now, I might never get another chance. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, calm, unreadable, with that eerie smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I heard her voice, soft and smooth, repeating the same words over and over. "Do you trust me?" I had lied, and she knew it. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The article about Christopher wouldn't leave my thoughts. Missing, presumed dead. And Delilah? She didn't even flinch when I brought up his name. No sadness, no grief, just amusement. I turned my head slightly. She was lying next to me, breathing slow and steady, her body relaxed in sleep. But something inside me whispered, "She's not asleep." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay still. My body was tense, every muscle tight with the urge to run. But where? She was unpredictable. And something told me that if she caught me trying to leave in the middle of the night, I might never make it out. I had to be smart, careful. So I waited. I listened to the clock tick, counted every second, every breath, and when I was sure enough time had passed, I moved, slowly, carefully, inch by inch. I slid out of bed, barely breathing as my feet touched the cold floor. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. If I did, I was afraid I'd see her eyes open, watching me. I moved toward the door, silent as a shadow, my fingers barely brushing the handle. "Going somewhere!" My heart stopped. The voice was soft, almost teasing, but it sent ice through my veins. I turned slowly. Delilah was sitting up in bed, watching me. Not angry, not surprised, just waiting. My throat was dry. I couldn't sleep. Her lips curved slightly. Neither could I. A tense silence filled the room. She tilted her head. "Why are you standing by the door?" I forced a chuckle, shaking my head. "Just needed some air." She nodded slowly, as if considering my answer. Then she reached over and turned on the lamp beside the bed. A soft, warm glow filled the room, and that's when I saw it, on the nightstand beside her. A small silver ring, a man's ring. I recognized it immediately, the same ring Christopher was wearing in the photo from the article. The air in my lungs turned to stone. She followed my gaze and smiled. "You've been digging, haven't you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. She sighed, stretching her arms as if this were nothing more than a casual conversation. "I had a feeling you would." I took a step back, my pulse slamming against my ribs. "Where did you get that?" I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. She turned the ring between her fingers, admiring it. "It was his," she said simply. My mouth went dry. "So he was here," I whispered. Her eyes flicked up to mine. For a while. My legs felt weak. I gripped the doorknob, needing something to hold on to. "Delilah, what happened to him?" She exhaled slowly, as if weighing her words. Then she set the ring back down and stood up. "You wouldn't understand." My breath came in short, sharp bursts. "Try me." She took a step forward. I took a step back. Her smile was gone now. "Some people think love is about holding on," she said, her voice soft, almost hypnotic. "But sometimes love is about knowing when to let go." A cold shiver ran down my spine. "What did you do?" Her eyes darkened. "I set him free. I couldn't breathe. The walls felt like they were closing in, the air thick and suffocating. I knew then, without a doubt, Christopher never left. And if I didn't get out of here soon, neither would I." My breath came in shallow gasps. My mind screamed at me to run, to get away from her. But I couldn't move. Delilah stood before me, calm, composed, watching me like she was enjoying this, like she had been waiting for this moment. "What do you mean, you set him free?" My voice barely came out. She let out a soft chuckle, shaking her head. "You ask too many questions." I gripped the doorknob tighter, my fingers trembling. "Where is he, Delilah?" For the first time, a flicker of something crossed her face. Annoyance? Amusement? I couldn't tell. "Why does it matter?" she asked. My pulse pounded. "Because he's missing, because I need to know if I killed him," she interrupted, tilting her head slightly. The words hung in the air, suffocating. My heart nearly stopped. She sighed, stepping closer. "You're scared of me now, aren't you?" I didn't answer. Her lips curled. "You weren't scared before. When I smiled at you, when I held you, when you kissed me." A chill ran through me. Was I lying next to a murderer this whole time? "I trusted you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She let out a small sigh, almost disappointed. "And now you don't." I swallowed hard. "Tell me the truth, Delilah. What happened to Christopher?" Silence. Then she turned away, walking toward the window. She pressed her hands against the glass, looking out into the night. "Do you really want to know?" she asked softly. I hesitated. but I had come too far to turn back now. Yes. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. Christopher was my husband. He loved control, loved power, but love shouldn't be about control, should it? She turned her head slightly, just enough for me to see her profile. He thought he owned me, that I was something to be handled, managed. My stomach tightened. I told him once, she continued, that if he ever tried to hurt me, I wouldn't just sit back and take it. She let out a small chuckle. He didn't listen. My hands turned clammy. So you... She turned to face me fully now. I warned him, and when the time came, I set him free. My chest tightened. Delilah, she sighed. I didn't kill him, if that's what you're thinking, but I made sure he'd never come back. Her words sent a sharp, cold fear through me. Where is he? I pressed. She studied me for a moment, then gave a soft smile. Gone? I didn't know what that meant, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. She walked toward me slowly, the tension in the air unbearable. You have two choices, she said. You can keep asking questions, keep digging, keep pushing, but you won't like where that road leads. She reached out and touched my face gently, and I flinched. Or you can let it go, stay here, with me. My throat tightened. I knew what she was doing. She was giving me an out, a warning. I need to go, I whispered. Her expression didn't change. I reached for the door handle, my heart racing. I half expected her to stop me, to grab me, to do something, but she didn't. She just stood there watching as I slowly opened the door. Be careful, she murmured. Not everyone gets a second chance. I stepped into the hallway, my breath shaky. I didn't look back. I walked out of the apartment, down the stairs and into the cold night air. My lungs expanded with relief, but my mind was still trapped in that room, in her words, in her smile. I never called her again. I never went back. But sometimes, late at night, I think about Christopher, and I wonder, did he really leave, or did she make sure no one could ever find him? And the scariest part, I'll never know. What do you think happened that night? Drop your theories in the comments below, and remember, some stories are meant to stay untold.